Hey guys, welcome to Girl Talk Pod. Today we're in another really cool location. We're at my barn that I ride at. And this is a really special episode with someone that is near and dear to my heart. And we're going to get into all of the stuff that it takes to be a cowboy, Kylar's journey, how riding has impacted my life, and everything in between. So I want to introduce Kylar Birkenfield.
Hi, how are you, Gabby?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great this morning.
Yeah.
This is a cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as we met, I knew that you were a special person, and I love that we're on the podcast and we get to talk about your story and the impact that you've made on my life. And I'm just glad that I get to give you a platform because you're a special person, and the things that you've persevered through and overcome, I think you're going to impact a lot of people. So, but it's freezing cold. It's like 40 degrees outside. We're in the barn. But I just want you to kind of introduce yourself a little bit, like who you are, where you're from, and then we'll get into everything else.
So my name's Kylar Birkenfield, and I was born in Nazareth, Texas. It's halfway between Amarillo and Lubbock, a little town with about 308 people in it. Growing up, my graduating class had 11 people in it. So I come from a real tight-knit farming community, and now here I am in Dallas, Texas, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a very interesting journey how we got from, point A to where we're at now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So tell me about childhood growing up, and then we'll get into the difference of your experience now.
Well, growing up, my dad's side of the family is the family that lived in Nazareth, and my mom's side of the family lived in Dimmitt. And Dimmitt it's probably about 10 minutes away, and it too is a small farming community and a little bit bigger. I think it has like 2,000 people in it. But, for the most part, my childhood, we lived in Dimmitt, right outside of Dimmitt. And, my mom's side of the family was a very, very big part of my life growing up. And, my mom's parents, they owned several businesses. They owned boutique stores in the little town and a concrete plant. My granddad, most definitely cowboyed, and that's just the community we came from. Everybody had cattle. Everybody had farmland of some sort or did something in that industry. And so it was just kind of like ingrained in me at a really young age. Yeah. But a lot of people don't know, my dad is not my real dad. He's my stepdad. He adopted me. And that floored a lot of people at some point in my life because it was kept such a secret. Sure. And I had epilepsy. I had grandma seizures, and I was epileptic up until I was like 6.5, 7 years old. And one day it miraculously went away. Wow. So I got injured whenever I was about 8 months old. And I had a hole on the left or right side, I can't remember, of my brain, and it caused me to have grandma seizures. Okay. Up until I was well into kindergarten, if not more. And, the doctors always told my mom and them, they said, he'll never be able to be a normal kid. He'll never be able to ride horses. He'll never be able to be in fights. He'll never, just do normal boy things, play football, etc. Right? And I came out of it one day. And I feel like I've always been kind of in a special place since then, Yeah. I'm not saying it hadn't been hard, but, I definitely overcame something at a young age that wasn't supposed to. For sure. And I mean, that's kind of the story of the rest of your life from what we'll get into later. For the rest of life from then till now, you've got a lot of life to live. Yeah. Knock on wood. Yeah. But that's kind of the theme of your life. It seems like just perseverance, getting set up with maybe not the best circumstances at times, but overcoming them and proving that, you're kind of right. You write your story at the end of the day, and the life is whatever you're going to create and whatever you make it. And I relate to this because my childhood wasn't easy, and statistically, it doesn't look like this growing up. You lead down a path of kind of destruction, and unless you really do the work and heal and put in the effort to be the best person like you've chosen to do, like I've chosen to do, if you don't just decide to do that, then
typically you end up in a lot shitty situation. You could end up probably 6 feet under pretty quick.
Most definitely.
So growing up in a farm town, I think that honestly the world has lost that magic, because we talk about and joke about, dating and the men that I've, dabbled with. And you talk about like the loss of like traditional values of respect and being a man. And I think, how do you think that growing up, because I think that you're an extremely respectable person, and I think you treat everyone with the utmost respect and care, and you're super genuine. The first time that I met you, was something that always stood out to me was you take your hat off, and you're just very respectful. So a lot of those things are traditionally instilled in you.
Yes.
So how do you think that has related to like your adult life, like how you treat people and like stuff like that?
Well, the traditions that I grew up with were ingrained in me, and I didn't realize I had them until people come along like yourself and point them out. And a lot of people have done that over several different instances, and you don't realize what is ingrained in you and like how you function until you go into a different realm of society, right?
Sure.
And so it's way different up there than it is down here in Dallas. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's neither good nor bad, I don't think. But I do think that a lot of the stuff that's been instilled in me had a lot to do with hard work ethic, respecting people, and just having a good moral compass.
Absolutely.
Right? And so growing up, it was a really big thing for my papa. We all sat around the dinner table in the evening and ate dinner, at least one meal together. And that was ingrained in me at a very young age at my papa's house, as my mom's side. And I never understood it. There was times I hated it, because sometimes we would just sit there and not talk. My papa, he was definitely not the real sociable type. He was an alcoholic, and he came out of alcoholism, and we'll get into that later. But it was definitely something that was ingrained in me. And now I see society down here, and it's like that's like a foreign thing to people in Dallas, to most people. Everybody wants to go out and eat. Everybody wants to go out and have dinner or whatever, go pay for dinner. And I'm just like, that never set good with me. And I just don't understand it, because if you're close to me and you come in my household, I expect that we cook you a meal or you cook for us or whatever, because like you said, you're near and dear to somebody.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that stuff just was ingrained, and I never knew it, and it comes out, it stands out whenever you enter that different society.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have. We need to be teaching more of it.
Yeah.
Especially to young women and young men. And I think it's definitely a lost cause.
For sure. I mean, they just... Oh, look at little Chata. Come here, my race. We'll let them get acquainted. It's okay.
The birds?
Yeah. So growing up, you... Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, you're good.
Okay, so growing up, your role models are your family, and they're hardworking in the farm industry. They've got multiple businesses. What did you kind of think that your life was going to look like when you were that age growing up in Nazareth?
Well, I thought it was going to be like everybody else. If you go to that quiet, quaint little town in the morning, about 6:30 in the morning, if you go to the gas station, there's one gas station, all the farmers and all the ranchers go there for coffee. And it's a repetitive thing every day. And so you see that when you go to school, right? The school's like 2 blocks from there. There's only like 6 blocks in Nazareth. And so you see that and you're like, wow, that's all I'll ever be, right? And I didn't really know the route that I was going to take. I knew it had something to do with agriculture, but I couldn't necessarily pinpoint it, because we did just about everything. We built our own fence. If animals need to be worked on, we did our own animals. Mechanicking, we mechanicked on our own stuff.
Yeah.
We were just very self-sufficient, and so it's hard to really narrow down at a young age, especially growing up in that community, like what you want to be, right? Some kids, want to go to school, be lawyers and doctors and all this stuff, but that just it wasn't ingrained in me, to just pinpoint something. And so I think at an early age, I was a bit a bit on the borderline of like, I don't know what I want to do,
Sure.
especially at a young age. I knew I wanted to work. I loved working. I loved working with my hands, and that was that. And I would get out of school just to go work, So, I can't say I just knew what I was going to do or be at that young of an age. But, my life changed at about 12 years old. So my papa was my role model, right? And he got in an accident. He died December 12th of 2012. But he had an accident where he smoked cigarettes. He had emphysema. But anyways, he got choked out in the shop one day. We had an old wood burning stove. And he ended up dying from that, And so at a real young age, my role model kind of left. Now, my dad that adopted me, don't get it wrong, he's my dad. He raised me. He was a mechanic, and I can mechanic, but it just didn't sit well with me. Sure. I was like, that's not the route that I'm going to take, right? He's a good man. He's good at what he does. He does that for almost every farmer in that town or in that county, and he's just good at it. But I just never seen myself going that route. I hated it at the time. And so at that point, my papa was gone, and I had to reach out and find mentors in my life because I started going downhill. And so at 12 years old, my mom told me that that Leroy wasn't my real dad. She told me on my birthday. And that was like a real shock to me and everybody around me, because everybody always thought he was my dad. I even thought he was my dad. I have his last name and everything. And it was so well hidden. And the irony of it is my real dad's side of the family lives probably a mile away from my mom's family where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
And I never met him.
Wow.
Up until I was about 15.
Cool.
And so like, it was like a big shock. And I just like, I didn't even know what to think about it at the time. I kind of fell apart, I fell apart to a point where like I was fighting in school, and I was definitely the troublemaker. That town's not very big, so it's easy to be the biggest troublemaker.
Yeah. And
I became that very quickly after that with Papa gone. And then, all that news broke to me. And so I would find every moment that I could away from home.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I was like, this is not what it was supposed to be, And so I just worked all the time. And I got involved with a vet clinic at that point. So horses were a big part of my life, but I never really had my own horse up until about this point. And then I got my first horse, and he was mine. I trained him and everything, and I loved him. And I got involved with this vet clinic, a large animal vet clinic, and I went to get my vet tech license. And Zach Smith is his name, out of Dimmitt. And he really, really took me under his wing, and I would go to his farm and help him farm and do stuff at the vet. Taught me a lot of stuff. And I was like maybe 8th grade then, 7th, 8th grade. And boy, he just did a lot of good for me. We would work his cattle and stuff, and that's just what I love to do, And so it took me finding mentors outside of my family after that to be able to shape me to who I am now.
Yeah.
And there's more, there's more people that took me under their wing after that, because I was such in bad shape mentally. I was in a real bad place mentally, and I didn't realize it until I got to be about 18 years old, how bad I was.
Yeah.
I just was in this fog and this funk that I couldn't get out of. The only way that I could get out of it was either drinking or working. Became a workaholic at a very young age. So at that point, my mom pulls me out of school, right? And it's probably about 3 years I was homeschooled, quote unquote, right? And just kind of really worked. I didn't really pay attention to school. I was always very smart, but really disregarded school. Didn't think it was important. I have a different opinion on that now, right?
Yeah.
But somehow I get back into the school system, a couple years later. But what really changed my life was this lady. Her name was Heather Thompson and Melanie Wilhelm. Melanie Wilhelm trained horses professionally through Wilhelm Performance Horses. She trained reiners. And I went out there, and I thought it was a bit of an odd environment because all the women at the barn were just that, women. And I grew up around an environment where outside the men worked, right? And this is not 10 minutes outside of the town I grew up in. She'd been there my whole life.
Wow, that's very progressive, I feel like.
Very much so, especially for that community, right? And I was talking with somebody the other day. I can't remember who it was. It may have been Jackie. But anyways, I was talking with somebody and I said, if I was a betting man, I would have to say that this world is becoming a woman's world. And I don't just mean that lightly. I mean that for real. And the reason I say that is because all the volunteers that I have at this place right here are women. There is no man that ever wants to come volunteer here. It's me and Eddie here, and Jeremiah. But for the most part, all of our volunteers are women, and they come and they bust ass just as hard as we do. Mm-hmm. And so, that's a big thing for me because it was kind of a culture shock. I was like, wow, all these women, they got 40 fucking horses out here, and they're riding every one of them all day long. And there was 3 women and me. And so it really started putting a different thing in me, like, wow, women really can run businesses. Women really can become successful, right? And my papa always told me, he said, a good woman will stand by your side and work just as hard as you do. I was like, whatever, whatever. And it became something that I seen firsthand. I mean, these women were hardworking women, and so they took me in, and when I started there, I would clean stalls and saddle horses and wash horses. That's all I did for a long time. And eventually, Heather started letting me start her colts, in the round pen, and I started learning a lot of stuff. And every day I can remember myself just hanging over the fence, at the arena and watching them women ride and thinking, wow, that is just perfect. That's beautiful. Right? Yeah. They would make horses do things, and I'm like, how in the world they had to come like that, right? Yeah. They didn't make them like that.
Actually, I really wish.
Yeah. But little did I know they put in a lot of hours and a lot of work. And so I respected that, I respect that. And that's why I respect a lot of women that are very successful. Jackie is very successful. I'm with Jackie. We've been together for pretty much this whole year, and she's very successful and she works hard, and that's just this podcast, Exhibit A, you work hard too. You put on something that benefits people and helps people. And I love that. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. So down this path of just trial and tribulation, whenever you're growing up, right, you get into some trouble, you start seeing a dim light, and your mental health is shot, and you're in a place of loss and feeling of abandonment and just confusion. Mm-hmm. I know that you've kind of told me a little bit of parts of your story of slipping up with maybe abusing substances and then getting into some trouble. Do you want to give me details, as much details as you want to give, but just kind of what that experience was like, what you learned in those darkest moments, and then what kind of brought you back?
So what got me there was very quickly, and how I got out of it took a long time. Mm-hmm. Right? And so before I even start with that story, the best words of wisdom I can have for somebody that's going through depression, and a lot of women struggle with depression, a lot of women. And, I was sitting there last night and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about because this is a women's podcast. I'm the first man on this women's podcast. Yeah,
you are. And I meant to say that earlier, is that I'm very protective of who comes on the show. I've only had a few guests. Most of them have been near and dear friends that I've built genuine trust in. And I've thought about having men on to, I want to have men on the show, but I've had men scheduled to come on. And at any time I've decided not to have them on because I just didn't feel like they were genuinely the person that was right for the show. And so I am not saying oh, it's an honor, but it really is. I want you to know how special that you are to me, because I am very protective, but I knew talking to you whenever we decided to do this, I was like, Kylar's perfect to be the first man on the show.
Well, I appreciate that.
Sidebar, but
yeah. So I was definitely getting a little bit nervous about that. I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to say, but everything that's supposed to be said is said at the right time. I believe that. People are put in places and things to say things that help people. And that's just that. And I've learned that through all the trials and tribulations I've been through. But to get back to what you were asking and saying, I worked for Melanie and Heather for a long time, and Zach. I worked for Zach for probably 3 years at the vet clinic, and then I worked for Melanie and Heather for years, all the way through high school. And my uncle, which is on my mom's side, he was real bad into drugs, and he was an alcoholic. And at this point in life, I was probably like a junior in high school, And I had really fallen into alcohol real bad, like get up and drink and go to bed drink. And it just became like this dirty cycle that I couldn't get out of.
Yeah.
And before, like, drinking was acceptable. Like, if you worked, you could drink where I came from. And it was somewhat acceptable to the society there, public, or the community, whatever you want to say. And I didn't realize how bad alcoholism was at that time. And so I would drink casually up until that point when I was a junior. And then I started getting where I was like drunk all day. And so my uncle, he lived in Lubbock. And so I thought, wow, what a good opportunity. I could just leave all this because the grass is greener on the other side. And I could go to Lubbock and go to Tech, right? And anyways, so I go down to Lubbock and I take my horses down there and I get in with the equestrian team at Texas Tech. And my uncle lives down there, and at this point he was heavy into drugs. So he introduced me to every kind of drug there probably was, and that was a sad deal. Now looking back, because he could have been such an influence, right? And yeah, he chose to be an influence for the bad. And
Sure.
So even your family does not have your best interest, right? And I've learned that the hard way. And nothing bad against my uncle. I love him. I wish the best for him. Is he still caught in that funk? Absolutely he is, and that's his deal and that's his business, I wish he'd come out of it. But yeah, so that happened, and I'm at the equestrian center. I worked under Danica Jorgensen. She was on the English side of the equestrian barn, and then I also helped Chance O'Neill some. And he was the rodeo coach for Texas Tech. And so me and this girl, we start dating, and she's into some hardcore stuff, but her family's got money. And I had moved to Lubbock and took my horses, my horse trailer, my pickup, and just dove in deep, and down there there's trouble. There's bright city lights, party all day,
Yeah.
skip school, whatever.
Yeah. Gosh, I haven't been to Lubbock since I was in high school, but gosh, the only thing to do there is party.
That's right. So I got involved with this girl, and so her dad didn't like me. The first time I ever met her dad, he had to come get us because we locked our keys out of our pickup, both of them, and we were drunk. And so made a very, very bad first impression, first of all. A year down the road or so, 2 semesters down the road, I have her horses. It was like May of 2017, and she leaves for the weekend. It's her birthday, and I end up having her horses with me. And I was such in a bad funk that I didn't even have no time concept of reality, like none. And so I'm really big about, and I tell my guys this to work for me, like, if you say you're going to be somewhere, be there, right? And I learned a hard lesson that day. I was supposed to take her horses back, I think, on Friday at like lunch, and I ended up not taking them back till Sunday, and didn't answer the phone, was doing drugs, was caught up, just drinking all day. Didn't care. I have no care in the world. Just thought that everybody was nice, because in the farming community, everybody looks out for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I found out really quickly that that's not the case everywhere. Not everybody has your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
Or is understanding, right? And so I take her horses. I have the liberty to take these horses back to her mom's house and her dad's house. And she wasn't there. And I text her. I said, "Hey, did your dad get a new pickup? There's a white pickup sitting out there." She said, "No." So I pulled in, and it was a brand inspector for Lubbock County. And he said, "Hey, do you have this guy's horses in your trailer?" I said, no, I have his daughter's horses. Well, she was barely 18, and the horses were not registered to her. They were registered to her dad. And so he got me out of the pickup, and he arrested me. He said, "You're under arrest." He said, "You're going to jail for possession of stolen livestock."
Oh.
And I said, "Are you sure?" And so I always had this dream of growing up. At this point, I had established I was going to be a professional horse trainer at that point. And just like that, every dream was just swept away, taken. And so I go to jail, and I had to get bailed out. And I'm put on probation for 4 years. Right? I kind of stepped back from the drugs and from all that stuff. that I was dabbling in for a while. And while I was on probation, I couldn't quit drinking. I just couldn't. I would try to quit drinking, and it would be like I'd quit, and by 5 o'clock, my cooler would be full of beer. And then it would become a thing where I would drink all day. It just was like this vicious cycle I was going through. And finally, probation told me in Lubbock, they're like, look, bud, you're going to either, one, have to admit yourself to a program, or you're up. Like one more dirty piss test and you're done. This is it. And so at this point, we're fast forward, 3 years. I had met another woman, and I was with her, and she had an ex-husband that I didn't know about. And I had a very, very hard run-in with him, and they had kids together and everything, and it just wasn't right. All the red flags were there, right? She lied. She did everything that you weren't supposed to do. And I ended up getting into it with her husband, right? And I'm already on strike 3. I've been sober now for about 8 months because I went to this program. And I found out that she's not sober, that she's got a whole slew of stuff going on. And so we get into it, me and her ex-husband. And then I find myself getting into it with her. At the same point, she tries to get in on me, beating him up, and it's a whole bunch of stuff. And so I ended up drunk that night, and I ended up beating them both up. And so that was strike 3. I went to prison. They put me in jail for basically assault. And so I go to jail, and I was sitting there for probably 3 or 4 months, and then I signed for a 4-year term with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And every dream that I had, of being a horse trainer at that point was completely gone. Like it would never come back. It was too far gone. It was too far gone. Nobody would ever hire me anymore, because I had that on my record. I just thought that I was going to have to find another trade. I was going to have to find another way to make a living. And don't get it wrong, between the time of that happening and before the livestock theft thing, there were times where I was sleeping in my trailer. I was homeless. There was a time after that, whenever they repoed my horses and took my horses, that I didn't have no job.
Yeah.
That I was homeless. And at that point, I grew up in a farming community, so I really wasn't allowed home. My mom and dad were very, very disappointed in me, very disappointed. And that was a hard thing to swallow too. I'm like, wow, I'm really on my own now. Like I wanted to be on my own so bad, and then now I am.
Yeah.
I'm on my own. Like here it is. And so I have to navigate this somehow. And I didn't know how. I really didn't. And I had some good mentors during that time, but I just really was like very secluded, very much so did not want to be around nobody. Cause I figured that, I made this mess, and I really didn't know how I made it. Did I intentionally have them girls' horses and not take them back? Absolutely not. Did I get thrown in jail for it? Absolutely I did, and I had to pay the cost for it.
Yeah.
And so, there was some big things that happened like that really started shaping me. And I had heard stories about people going to prison, and I thought, wow, this could be as bad as
Chloe wants to say something.
I had heard stories. I thought this is as bad as it can get right here. This is it. And so I go to prison, right? And things kind of changed right there. I had been sober, the year before, and then I ended up going to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, and that was a journey in itself. That was a whole lifetime in itself right there. I started out as just a level 3, and I ended up going to high security. That was during COVID. And so it was very much so locked down, and it was every man for himself. And but how I got myself in that position, I would sit there day and night and think, wow, I got myself in this cell block, and I don't know how I'm going to get out. And what's after this? What are we going to do after this, Kylar? It took me probably 70 days in a cell by myself before I hit a breaking point where I was like, I got to change. I have to change. I'm talking about lockdown, 24 hours a day, couldn't do nothing. And so I started, reading the Bible, of course, but I started picking up a lot of good literature. Financial literature, entrepreneur literature. I started taking classes and stuff, and started kind of rehabilitating myself. And I got put on the hoe squad. And for people that have never been to prison or whatever, the hoe squad, they make you go and hoe the fields, literally, by hand. and that's your time you're allowed out. And that didn't last very long. I was on that for a little bit, and I guess they seen something in me. One of the lieutenants seen something in me, and they shipped me to another unit where they train horses for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice down in Huntsville, Texas. And so I find myself on this farm, and here I am. I'm starting these horses for these, like, guards are riding them with rifles and stuff, and here I am, you know. And then that didn't last very long, and that lieutenant seen something in me too, and he said, the warden wants to see you. And there's only two reasons the warden wants to see you in prison. That's because a family member died or because you're going back to jail. You know, you're fixed to get locked up. And it was neither, actually. It was neither. And so he said, do you want this job? I got a job for you, and I think you're just the man for it. And I said, what does it entail? He said, I didn't ask that. He said, do you want this job or not? You know, I said, sure. So they put me in a van with no handcuffs on, need I mind you. My line class jumped from, you know, a level 3 to what they call an S2 outclose, which means I can go outside the prison with no handcuffs on, no nothing, no supervision. And just like that, everything changed. And so I go to work for this warden in Venus, Texas, right here south of Dallas, as a private unit. I had, you know, my own cell. And at 6 a.m. in the morning, I left the prison and went out the prison doors with no supervision, and I didn't come back till 6 p.m.
Oh, wow.
And I would clean the warden's office. I would clean the front lady's office. I would go outside. I'd mow. I'd do the gardens. But the even cooler thing was the warden always lives, you know, fairly close to the prison, and I could go over there. And so I start, you know, cultivating this relationship with this warden and you know, the boss man that would let me out the gate and whatnot, and I just started making a difference, you know. And I did that for the remainder of the time I was in there. And one of the front desk ladies, one day, she said, have you looked at your paperwork? I said, I ain't had no paperwork. Have you talked to your mom? I said, I ain't talked to nobody. She said, well, you made parole. And I said, wow, are you sure? Like, I was like, no, I didn't make parole.
Yeah.
She was like, yeah, you made parole. And this lady, she starts crying. And they've been doing this for like 17 years. The warden had been a warden for like 17 years or whatever. And she said, we've never had an inmate that takes as good a care of you as you have. And she just cried, and she's like, you're going to go home and you're going to do great things. And a part of me started to believe it then, right? I had a lot of people speak a lot of things over me over the years. And at that point, I actually believed it. I was like, wow, I really am going to make a difference. Because out of all the inmates in Texas, there was 5,000 men on that unit. I was the only one out of all 5,000 that could go outside that unit and go with no supervision.
Yeah.
And so that says a lot, you know, especially for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. But yeah, so things kind of started changing around, and I get involved with this ministry here in Dallas. It's not turning back. It's I can't remember the name of it now. Anyways, the guy's name's Chico. They're with Cornerstone Baptist Church here in Dallas, and they would start coming in. Chico was my mentor, and Chico owns a business that's probably about 2 miles from here. And Chico too was in prison 20 years ago. And so he's like, man, there's a good life out there waiting on you and all this stuff. And so he's like, what's your dream? One day he sat down, he's like, what is your dream? I said, well, if you really want to know the truth, where I'm the happiest is with horses. He said, I know someplace. And I was like, all right, well, whatever. They ain't gonna hire me. I got a background. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So Chico's like, look, do me a favor and just come to Dallas when you get out. And I was like, I can't do that. I gotta go home. You know, that's the only thing I know. And he's like, just come to Dallas. I promise I'll have you a place. I'll have everything. So I took a chance, right? And I come to Dallas, and I was there for probably 4 months, and I worked for him. And he owns a welding shop. So I would just sit in there and weld, or I'd go out on site and put fence up for him and whatnot. And one day he's like, hey, let's go somewhere. I was like, are you sure? And he was like, yeah, let's go somewhere at lunchtime. And the first time he asked me, I was like, I'm not really interested, because he was going to bring me here. So I'm not really interested. And I still had no hope for horses, right? So about a week later, we come over here, and he's like, you're going to get out of the truck and you're going to go talk to these people. He's like, because you have a definite calling on your life. You have a gift. And I said, no, I can't do it. But I ended up getting out of the pickup, and I walked over to the arena, and I just told the people, I said, here's the deal, right? This is what all I know. I've rode with these people, I've finished a lot of horses. I've done a lot of things with horses. Whatever.
Okay.
And they were very impressed. But I said, here's a catch. I have a background. And didn't seem to faze them at all. Not one bit. So they hire me immediately, and I come over here from Chico's. And, there was probably 4 or 5 people working here at the time, and they're all gone now,
Yeah.
And, but anyways, yeah, it's just things took off in a different direction. And I've been here a year now, and I'm just so grateful. And the people that own the place, I told them, I said, well, my dream is to train horses one day and help kids. And I do just that every day. That's what I do every day. And is it hard? Some days it's hard for sure, because like I went from like not having anything and being pretty much self-sufficient to like I run this place. I have to steward it like it's my own.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of responsibilities that a lot of people don't know about. I run this place. I make sure it runs smoothly, make sure it makes money. And these people completely trust me with everything that they have out here.
Yeah.
And I got a key. That's my story is I'll show people my keys that I have now. And I'll tell them, there's a point in my life where I didn't have no keys.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get out. And now I've got the keys to this whole entire place. It's a $14 million facility.
Mm-hmm.
And so just been sober and been doing the right thing and really just giving back to people and helping people.
Yeah.
As depression is a really, really hard thing to get yourself out of. Hard thing. And a lot of women go through depression, and men too, but women mostly, because a lot of women are at home or have desk jobs, things like that. And it just like starts playing with your mind. And so it's a big deal to where we get in a society that really doesn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not talked about a lot.
Yeah.
It's becoming talked about more. But when I was a kid, that wasn't a thing.
Oh, for sure.
I never heard of it.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, you're in a funk? Well, here, I'll give you a swift kick in the ass, and how about you get out of that fucking funk?
Yeah. Yeah. Get over it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, cry me a river, right? But now it's a little bit different because there's most definitely a market, not just a market for finances, but a market for people to be healed, and come to some freedom, whether it be from alcohol or drugs or from just being in that funk.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my story. And then, we get to the part where I met you,
Mm-hmm.
and this place has actually done more for me than I could ever repay back, because me and Jackie, we met back, beginning of the year in April or so. And she's volunteered here for 6 years, right? And so the irony of that story is like, while I was out messing around and doing all the bullshit I was doing and causing trouble, right? She's over here volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
I would never have volunteered at that point in my life, right?
Yeah.
I needed money, and so I met her here and we've been together. She's a good woman, and she treats me good and she stands by me and supports me. And so everything lines itself out in a way, and nothing that you're going through will ever not add up to what your potential is. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So,
yeah. Oh, well, I really appreciate you opening up and sharing it. And, that was really dark times in your life, but I know that anyone listening to it's going to be inspired by your perseverance and, the hope that you had in believing in yourself. And I think that that's number one. What I was hearing is that was the struggle, was just believing that you deserved better after, having, being so down. I think that's the hardest part when you're so low. It's just like having hope and believing that there's a better option for you. It's like, yeah, you fucked up. You made a mistake. Everyone does. And you have a choice. We're going to wallow in it and be miserable and, just not do anything for ourselves, or we decide to recognize the mistake, own up to it, and then now it's time to put it in gear and how we're going to make our life better. I think that you do a lot of healing here. Personally, I know that, and we can talk about, get into like the equine therapy, like that's a thing. People spend time with horses. You've talked about rehab with horses, and I personally, I've been in therapy for 7 years, and I have never felt more healed than I do on a horse here. Like the growth that I've had. And I think that what we were saying earlier is everything happens when it's supposed to. Everything is said when it's supposed to be said. Is that this has been an extremely transformative and a transitional year in my life. And I think of course, it's the year that I meet you. It's the year that I come to the barn, because I've had so much So many things healed. Every time I get on that horse, I'm healing childhood trauma. I'm healing so much stuff. So talk to me about that.
Well, we can go back a little bit because I kind of like fast forwarded through a lot of things, because you can never tell the story when you're in your darkest times. You can never go back and tell the story and portray it as dark as it was.
Sure.
People can imagine, right? And I can imagine, but to me, I will never be able to tell you how dark them times were. But there was a point in my life where my mom had me too in counseling or whatever. And I'd go every, I think, Wednesday. And this was between the time I worked for Zach at the vet clinic and Melanie out at the horse barn. And I hated this lady. I hated her. She would make me sit on the couch, and I was, 8th grade, 7th grade, and she wanted me to talk about what I was feeling and how I was doing and just whatever. And I could not come to grips talking to this lady because I'm like, you've never lived through this. You've never been through what I've been through. Mm-hmm. And so my mom had me in them for probably a year, right? So I go to work for Melanie and Heather, and like that's when I started like blossoming. Did I still have an addiction problem? Yes. While still drinking? Absolutely. Still misbehaving some? Yes. But to be able to be vocal, right? And it's so weird because horses aren't vocal, right? Mm-hmm. They run off of feel. Okay. They feel emotions. They feel energy. They can't talk to you. And so I would get over here and get on these horses, and I would feel like I could open up and talk. And so I would talk with Heather and Melanie about things that I've never talked to nobody about, how I was feeling. And this is, 8th grade, whatever. And so horses became a thing where it's like, okay, this is a lifestyle. Okay, this has changed my life. And so if you want to go back in retrospect to horses changing your life, absolutely. I probably would never be where I'm at if it wasn't for horses.
Yeah.
And so they changed my life at a real young age. And I realized at that point, like I was just at peace, And then when I started believing in myself and when I was working for Melanie and Heather, I'm like, wow, I really can train horses. I can make these horses do what Melanie and Heather does, right? And I always thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I never thought that I'd ever learn that. And I learned it. I learned how to communicate non-verbally with horses, which made me communicate better verbally with humans.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole big background to that. But therapy, most definitely. I've got several kids that come out and see me that are definitely not here, and adults. They're definitely not here for lessons. Do they get a lesson? Absolutely.
Yeah.
We give them a horse lesson and we teach them how to ride better and be better. But it's funny how I tell a lot of my clients this: whenever you come out here, you think you're signing up for lessons, but you may be coming out here to learn a little bit about yourself. A lot.
For sure.
And so it's funny how, like, especially with kids, how it always turns into more of like an emotional thing for kids, because kids are very emotional. Mm-hmm. And so when you get a kid on horseback and you can start to see their temperament, you can start to see how they react to things that they can't communicate about, right? So I make them communicate to me how they're feeling. Yeah. And they do. They just do. And some adults do too. Now, some adults I have that come out here, they just come, they just want to ride. That's their gig. That's what they want to do. But for the most part, yeah, I definitely try to find a spot somewhere where I'm like, okay, but why is it making you feel that way? Like, why are you aggravated? Or what's going on at school? Right? Yeah. What's going on at home? So that we can like narrow this down, because they think that they're aggravated with the horses, and they're not. Really, they're aggravated at something that's going on outside of that. Projecting, correct. So I really, really believe that horses changed my life, and that dog, right?
Look at her. She is ridiculous.
She is something else, isn't she?
Yeah, she is.
That's a cool dog right there.
We have if you're not watching, we have Kylar's dog Chloe, who is hanging out with us. We're talking about getting on the horse and like really, you got to surrender yourself to these animals. Sure. These are thousands of pounds animals that you are getting on, and it's a game of trust. Mm. They need to learn to trust you. You need to learn to trust them. Absolutely. And I have said this: there's no ego when it comes to riding horses. No, and they teach you so much about yourself. And I say this all the time, that you specifically not only teach me so much about caring and riding a horse and being confident in the saddle, but you've taught me so much about myself. And one of the first couple of lessons, you're like, you have a hard time setting boundaries, don't you? And I was like, yeah, I'm a people pleaser. And you knew that just from watching me ride a horse, which is incredible. And then I really learned a lot about, not getting easily manipulated, because these motherfuckers will manipulate you if you give them the opportunity to.
They will manipulate you.
Yes. And you really learn how to set boundaries and, stand up for yourself in the most respectful and trusting way of these animals, because they're perfect baby angels and they do nothing wrong.
Right. Yeah. There's a part of that I agree with. There's a part that I don't, but they will take advantage of you for sure. And you can definitely tell people that have like a firm hold on boundaries with family and friends.
Yeah.
Versus somebody who doesn't. And it's okay, because at one point I didn't, and I tell people this all the time. You have to make sure that your yeses are yes and your nos are no.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, not only will horses walk all over you, people will walk all over you.
Yeah.
And I've experienced it firsthand. Don't think that just because I got out of prison and I came here and like it's all been peaches and cream, right? It hasn't. It's been a definite learning curve. I went from nothing to running something, and that says a lot, but also it's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
So, yeah, most definitely. I think that horses are the best thing that people can do for themselves, for sure, 100%.
So where, I guess, let's just play, not necessarily pretend, let's manifest. What do you think, ideally, would the future look like for you in horses, whether like starting your own facility or starting a program, or what does that look like for you? If there's no bounds, no limitations, money, opportunity, what does that look like for you?
Well, what it looks like for me is just having a place just like I had when I went to Melanie and Heather's, and I'm not saying physically, but I'm talking about like an open concept place where there's no judgment, right? There's no social pools on anything. And it's a facility that I can have kids come ride horses or board their horses, and we can fill their life up. And I'm big on that. I'm real big on that. And so if I had a choice and I had an opportunity, I would go have a barn that I could have 20 horses at, or 30. And I would create a program where kids could come, right? And it had nothing to do with events, nothing to do like that, because we do a lot of that out here. But it would be
no pumpkin patch.
Yeah, none of that stuff. No, yeah. That's a whole different subject. That's a whole other 2-hour subject. But it would be a thing where we allow kids to come out, and like parents, it's your time to sit on the sidelines. Because I think there's a point where like parents are way too involved in their kids' life. And a lot of kids make fucked up decisions because of the fear of how their parents may react.
Yeah.
Right. And so at some point, like, you have got to step back, whether it be for lessons, whether it be for your kid coming to therapy, and just like let somebody else like take that role for a minute.
And trust your child.
Yeah. And trust your child to make good decisions, because if you don't, then your child will definitely grow up making wrong decisions.
Yeah.
I'm living proof of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if I had no limits on a place, it would definitely be a barn that we did lessons at, and we trained horses professionally.
Yeah.
For sure. And kids could come, adults could come. And I'm very, very big on cultivating people. I have a guy that works for me. His name's Eddie Bertho Ramirez. And Eddie's worked for me for a year now. And last year he came to me and he said, "This is what I want to do." I said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" And he said, "I want to graduate school early, because whatever you're doing with them horses out there, I want to learn how to do it." And at the time I was working with Peppa and Geronimo. And I said, "It's easy. You graduate school. I'll make sure that you have a lifestyle that you can live out of this, and you learn a lot." And so the kid sat down and really grinded on school, and he ended up graduating high school early.
Yeah, he just graduated. Yeah.
And good kid, very good kid. And I trust him. He drives one of my vehicles, and I see a lot of me in him. He would hang over the arena fence and watch what I would do just in amazement.
Yeah.
And so that's how I was. I was like, wow, how does that even come about? Is that even a thing? I remember being right there where he's at 16, 17 years old. And so I just want to help set him up for success, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea of a place where I can set kids up to have a good work ethic and be super successful. Because a lot of people will laugh at you and tell you, "Oh, you'll never become something, or you'll never be able to make it in this industry or that industry. You have to have a law degree or a doctorate degree, whatever." I think that's baloney. Do I have an education now? Yes, I do. I have several. And a lot of the education that I have has to do with business. I went to the Hankerman School of Business, got like basically a miniature MBA. And then I also have a bachelor's degree in Christian counseling.
Yeah.
So a lot of that, stems into what I want for the future. Is it going to happen? I don't know. You never know. I never knew I'd be sitting here, talking to you, this many years later after all the shit I've been through. But man, it's just been a ride for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I know that Eddie looks up to you. In the time that I've, been here, I've been riding for like 6 months ish. And maybe less than that. Oh my gosh. I feel like I've known you forever, but it's been like 4 months maybe.
Maybe. You came in summertime sometime.
Yeah.
So,
but the time that I've known Eddie, I've seen him grow a lot in confidence and sass. And he's definitely learning that from you.
Yeses are yes and no's are no, right?
Okay, we have another guest. Or Chaka. Would you like to say anything to the viewers? We have the barn cat. I feel like if I was an animal, I would be a barn cat specifically.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so we're talking about Eddie and the growth that I've seen in just the few months that I've known him. And like really, you put a lot of yourself into your staff and you just, are cultivating them to be a true cowboy. And with that comes a lot of responsibility.
Yes.
And danger and just, the things that I've seen out here, I can't even imagine what you've seen in your time.
Oh, yeah.
But I wanted to talk about this kind of trend right now. And I don't know if it's going to be a trend or if it's going to be something that sticks, but this like cowboy culture that everyone's like diving into. You've got supermodels now doing cow cutting, like Bella Hadid. She's out there and she just won Rookie of the Year, which is awesome. But you have all these influencers now that are like riding horses, and I would just like to claim that I've been riding horses since I was little.
Yeah. This has been a thing.
This has been a thing, but I've been a horse girl. But you have all this culture, right? But tell me what these people want to be a part of this culture. What does it mean to be a cowboy?
Oh wow,
physically and mentally.
Well, physically you better be ready to work.
Yeah.
Because horses in a sense are like babies. You have to feed them and water them and take care of them 7 days a week. There is no off days with horses. And so if you have this like pretty picture in your mind where you want to have a barn or have horses and stuff, and you think that you're going to get a sleep in on Christmas Day and not go feed your horses, you're lying to yourself, right?
Yeah. So
a lot of it's got to do with work ethic, but a lot of it, is being patient. To be in agriculture or to be in anything to do with cattle or horses, you have to be patient because life is a slow process, a slow progression, and it takes years to train a horse. It takes years to become a good rider. You don't just wake up and become a good rider. I can show you the most talented people in the world that train horses, and each one of them will tell you that they had more work ethic than they did talent.
Sure.
And I can say the same for myself. I probably had, maybe 60% talent, and I probably had 80% work ethic. And, that's how you get your above 100%, right? And you become something great. A lot of the great people that have made a lot of money off horses will tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
You have to have a work ethic. And, it's also about being respectable, having a good moral compass, what's right and what's wrong. And there was a time in my life where I didn't care about my moral compass. And we've went over that, and whatnot. But I think it is so intriguing how this society, especially down here in Dallas or, in Los Angeles or Hollywood behind the camera, right? Everybody's like, oh, horses this and horses that. It's always been that way. Like Yellowstone blew it up. Yellowstone was the pivotal point from where we were like a digital society where we, jumped back into like horses are this big thing, right? and cattle and agriculture. It's always been a big thing. And people that grow up in the city don't realize that. It's all man-made.
Yeah.
They don't realize that when you go out further west, that's where all of the cotton comes and all of the crops come that feed you and clothe you. And people just don't understand that. And so, and the beef, you go eat a nice steak, it probably did not come from your backyard, you know.
No,
your
came from Amarillo.
Came from Amarillo, Texas. Yeah. Beef capital of the world, Hereford, Texas. And I grew up 45 minutes from there.
It smells like cow shit there.
It's perfect. It smells like money.
Perfect.
Yeah. Whenever I go back, I'm like, yes. Yes.
Sounds like money.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm dead.
But yeah, you know, growing up like that is definitely a hard thing to live up to.
Sure.
For sure. There's a lot of unspoken expectations. There's a lot of very verbal expectations, right? And it's very, very hard to be around the culture I grew up in, right? Because the Cowboys are real tough.
Yeah.
There's no off days. It don't matter if it's raining or it's cold or snowing. Like you're definitely horseback. You're definitely checking your cattle, especially when it's cold, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a lot that I have had to instill. Like Eddie grew up right here in the city. And if you look at him now and see how he rides a horse and whatnot, you would not think that kid grew up in smack dab of Pleasant Grove. Yeah. In Dallas, Texas, right? And sure enough, he did. You know? And so it's taken a lot of work to cultivate him and Jeremiah too, you know, and I just create this safe space. And Jeremiah is a very, very good example of this. So Jeremiah worked for me this year. He graduated high school last May. He worked all summer, went to college, A&M Commerce. I talked him into getting like a something to do with the agricultural degree. And he's up there doing that. And for fall break and Christmas break, he's back right now. He comes back, right?
Yeah.
So we want to create a space that is like sure enough the Cowboy culture, right? But it has a new spin on it. And the new spin is like you're always welcome back, right? This is a safe place for you.
Yeah.
It don't matter where I'm at, right? I want my people to leave filled up and come back for more. And that's what he does. And he's a very good prime example of it. The minute he got on Christmas break, he's like, hey, where are you at? Can I come to work?
Yeah.
You know, and so we always want to create that space where kids feel like they're involved and that they're growing and learning, you know, and the only way to do that is give them some responsibility. And a horse is a lot of responsibility. And I've given Eddie a horse that he's trained by himself. I maybe rode him one time, you know, and so.
Who is it, Lee?
Lee, yeah. And, you know, Eddie went through a period where he learned some hard lessons with Lee. He got bucked off like 12 times in 5 days, you know. And I kept telling him, I'll take that horse over so you don't get hurt or so he don't. And one night he was in tears. He's like, I just don't understand. One day I can ride him. He's good. The next day he breaks all my trust. I said, that's life, bud. You know, that's how we learn. People do that too. So like if you can't accept that now and try to move past that, then you'll never be anything great. But don't ponder on it, right?
Sure.
Because horses do that. They'll break trust. Like one of my best horses out here, Geronimo, he broke my face in, I think, June. He broke my face in June. And didn't really destroy my trust because I grew up getting hurt and I know that horses can act up at any given moment. But for sure enough, you know, busted my mouth up and broke the maxilla bone in my face and created a lot of damage. And now he's one of the better horses we have, you know? So I just, there's a whole lot that goes into it. And being tough is 90% of it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I saw that firsthand on Tuesday. I was talking to my mom about this last night. And I was telling her about, we were riding and Jeremiah's working with this beautiful horse, Roscoe, and he gets bucked off and lands on his head and he's laid out in the arena and you just see him get up and walk it off. And I was like, Mom, it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. She's like, do you not watch Yellowstone? I was like, but when you see it in person, it's like the cowboy glitz and glamour that they're putting out in the media is cute and all on TikTok and whatever with everyone in their NFR outfits and whatever. But once you see that firsthand, that is some cowboy shit.
Yeah.
Right there.
And it is. They put a lot of glitter behind it and it's not always that way. You better be able to take a kick or better be able to get bucked off. Like that day I broke my face. I had a lesson client in the arena and I broke my face in her lesson. And I gave her full hour. I finished her lesson. I told the boys, okay? She was like, are you good? I said, I'm good. Yeah, just go ahead. I didn't realize I'd broke my face. You know what I mean? But for sure, you know, I mean, I had blood everywhere, you know? And I was like, well, we got to finish this lesson. You paid for your lesson. I'm not going to short you on your hour.
Yeah. See, that's the cowboy right there.
So, you know, it just, things like that, that a lot of people don't realize what goes into it.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people come ride these horses out here with us that have never rode horses, and they're like, oh, they're such sweet babies. And while they're gentle and sweet, but you will never know the amount of hours that are put in on a horse to get it trained to that point.
No.
And that's why horse trainers make so much money, is because it takes so many hours. I cannot tell you how many hours I put in. We have 16 horses out here in training with us, and we've put in a lot of overtime.
Yeah.
A lot.
You work like 90 to 100-hour weeks.
Yeah, a lot. And we don't get everything done we're supposed to get done, And so it's just a very tough upfront culture.
Yeah. So tell me, if a girl, because all these girls want cowboys.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
They think they do.
They don't.
They think they do. So give me some tips. If a girl, she wants to date a cowboy, what do you need to have to date a cowboy?
Well,
or what should you expect when wanting to date a cowboy?
Well,
maybe we should have Jackie come on.
I can definitely attest to this, because my papa was a very, very scary man, and he was sure enough had everything in him you could ever think of. And it's weird because I really wouldn't necessarily date people to be in a relationship with them, because they couldn't handle me. Because my yeses are yes and my no's are no's, and I will backtalk you, But there's a reason behind everything I do, and I'm not mean about it. I used to, probably was, but I told Jackie this when we first got together. I said, I don't really date. You don't want to date me. I work a lot of hours first, and second, I'm very, very hard to get along with, because I'm very particular about what my expectations are. I'm very particular about my barn. I'm very particular about how you ride my horses and how you learn. There's just a standard that goes with it, and she really didn't even bat an eye at it. And really, I tried to scare her off. I was like, look, I want to take you out, but here's the thing. I got a background and all this stuff. And besides all that, I'm hard to get along with. And she didn't bat an eye. She's like, okay, man. And so, a lot of it's, if you do not like your man not to be home, don't date no cowboy.
Yeah, that's what my mom said. They're married to their land. They're married to the horses.
That's right, and the cattle.
She's like, they're always going to choose them over you. So you better marry them too.
And I wouldn't say it's necessarily that you're chosen over that, but there's priorities in life.
Sure.
And you definitely can't let a horse skip a meal, especially if you're riding them.
Yeah.
If your horse skips a meal, they lose a lot of stuff, a lot of energy, nutrition, just a whole lot of stuff. And it's very important to take care of your livestock, just like you would your baby or your dog, right? Yeah. You feed your dog twice a day, but it's right there, right? Same difference. And so it's very, very hard to be with a real cowboy. If he's the true grit type cowboy and he knows what he's talking about, he's not easy to get along with at all. Not at all.
Tell me give me some indications of a real cowboy. You've got, this cowboy culture, but like if there's anything like fashion wise, truck wise, behavior wise, give me like one or two things. Like if this man is wearing this, or if this man acts like this, that's a cowboy.
Well,
or and then tell me the fake shit that you've seen.
Okay, yeah. So actually, it's funny you bring this up, because I seen a video. I think JB Mooney did it on a podcast. Maybe it was Dale Brisby. I can't remember.
He's a $7 million bull rider.
But one of them, I can't remember which one was talking, but they said you can always tell when a motherfucker has his cowboy hat on backwards. And he ain't the real thing.
Yeah.
And I see that all the time. But like, when I go buy my hats, I get them crease especially for me.
Sure.
A lot of people go buy their hats off the shelf, they put them on, and that's that.
Yeah.
If your hat comes off while you're riding a horse, you ain't a cowboy.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a big thing. And then you can also tell the old school type from the new school, because your new school guys, that they're not necessarily that they're not cowboys, but they may have been raised a little bit different. They wear all the Ariat jeans and all the the fancy shit,
like Luke Casey boots, and So not working boots.
Yeah.
They're not working in those boots.
Like your real cowboy's going to wear Boost of Money's, Rios of Mercedes, like stuff like that. The Hires are good boots. But also like my jeans that I wear, they're $32.99 at Cavender's, and they're the old MW13Zs Wranglers. And that's just what we grew up in culture wise, And so I wouldn't say that means they're necessarily fake or not fake, but I definitely can definitely pinpoint somebody who's tough as nails and somebody who's not. Tall tale sign, women. If you look at a man's hands, you can tell everything about him.
Mm-hmm.
I promise you. If you look at a man's hands, you can tell everything about him. So that's
like if
that's your
they're
sign.
worn and torn.
Oh yeah,
and
like built a. If you can rope a horse that's running around or a cow and not have a pair of gloves on, you're a true cowboy.
yeah, because you got that built up calluses.
Yeah, for sure. Some real hands. Yeah.
Oh
so
my gosh.
That's a tall tale sign.
That is, yeah. Well, I feel like we, yapped and got into, your incredible story of perseverance and recovery. We've got some good tips now how to weed out the fake cowboys and find a real man. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about specifically, or?
No, one thing that I wanted to touch on that I kind of like skipped over, right? And I didn't skip over it for no other reason other than I didn't know if we'd have enough time. But if you find yourself in a place where you're like, wow, I really don't know how I got here, the best thing that you can do for yourself is give yourself time. Time heals everything. So a lot of people will be hard on themselves because they don't make progress day by day. But if I was as bold to say, like, your progress should be looked at like a business year over year, right? Mm-hmm. Don't cheat yourself and look at your progress day by day. And I struggled with that for a while. But now I look at my progress year over year. And so, like, what am I going to accomplish next year?
Hello,
Don't play with the camera. But yeah, that's one thing I would say. And like, if you're in a depression, like, I would definitely, I'm not saying counseling's for everybody, but I'm saying maybe find you a horse barn somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
It cannot hurt you.
Yeah. If you want to come here, let me know.
Yeah, for sure. Let us know, and you're more than welcome to come out here.
Yeah, you're going to get healed. Yeah, no, I think that like the biggest thing, like the word that came to my head when you were saying that is patience. And that's something that's been the word of my year is just patience, because I have been impulsive and, you want instant gratification and you want to see results. And then once that moment is gone, it's gone, right?
For sure.
So I've learned, it's this quote by Aristotle. It's called, patience is bitter, but the fruit is sweet. And it's so true. It's anything that I've waited for and worked super hard for is always lasted. The joy, the appreciation has lasted so much longer than anything that was quick. And I'm talking about relationships, career and friendships and material things that I've waited instead of impulsively bought. I've always enjoyed it more when I worked harder for it, waited, and really. Yeah. So that's been something that's
for sure
this year for me.
Patience is a hard virtue to grab the concept of, because we live in if you want to go to McDonald's, right, you can get something instantly from McDonald's, Starbucks, wherever. We live in everything's on your phone, right? And so patience is a big deal. My granddad's he's 102 years old. He's still alive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, man, can you imagine living over 100 years, right? From 1919 is when he was born all the way to 2025, right?
Yeah.
And so back then they didn't have all the stuff we have now. So can you imagine that culture shock, like through the years? Of course it was slow progression, right? But imagine looking back on your life and thinking, wow, how far has society came?
Oh,
and has it even bettered itself?
Yeah.
Like 2007 was the first iPhone that came out. You know? But before that, like they had bag phones. Then before that, they had a landline. You had to plug it in.
Yeah, you didn't.
My granddad and them came into Dimmitt, Texas on a wagon.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah.
And so that
that's that 1883 shit
for real,
or 1928, whatever.
1923,
whatever that show is. I love all Taylor Sheridan shows.
Oh yeah, they're good. But patience is a huge thing. And yeah, if you're gonna date a cowboy, you better have some patience.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's where we end it. Is if you're gonna date a cowboy, you better have some patience. Yeah, that's
right.
Well, I really appreciate you, coming and opening up and sharing your story.
Absolutely.
I am very, very protective of this space and only want to put out, extremely genuine and like just think content and messages that are going to help people. And I think that anyone that listens to this is going to be inspired. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me be on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was an honor.
All right. Thank y'all so much for tuning in and watching this episode. We are in the last few days of 2024. So you're actually going to be in it for a treat next week. I'm going to have this week, we're going to have 2 episodes out. 2 guests, 2 episodes in the same week. So you're really, really getting all the love. And then we're going to close out the year with a reflection episode next week. So you have another guest on Thursday, and we'll see you then. Bye.